Associate Professor.
This meeting is being recorded.
Lillian Dubé is an associate professor and former chair of the Theology and Religious Studies Department at the University of San Francisco. In 1999, she made history as the first Black woman to earn a Doctor of Theology degree from Stellenbosch University, South Africa. She is the executive director of the film USF in Zambia, HIV/AIDS and Social Justice, co-author of African Initiatives in Healing Ministry, and co-editor of Theology in the Context of Globalization, African Women's Response. Dubé received international fellowships and awards, including the American Association of University Women Fellowship. She has served on the AAUW Research and Grants Awards Selection Panel as panelist and session chair. She has been a speaker at Harvard and Stanford universities, a visiting associate professor at Columbia University, and a research fellow at the University of South Africa. Teresa Ugar is a professor at California State University, Los Angeles, in the Chicano, and Latino Studies Department. She is a Latinx scholar in religion whose scholarly focus is on women and ecology in Latin America. She is a graduate of Harvard University with a master's degree in feminist theology and has a PhD from Claremont Graduate University in the field of women studies and religion. Her areas of specialization are gender and colonial Latin American history, ecofeminist theories and praxis, and transnational ecofeminist movements. She is the author of Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, Feminist Reconstruction of Biography and Text. Her current research reflects on transnational ecological movements with a focus particularly on issues that relate to border, migration, and climate justice, as well as incoming and outgoing migratory patterns along the southern US border, including Mexico, Central America, and Latin America. Teresia Hinga, born in Kenya, teaches in the Religious Studies Department at Santa Clara University. She received a bachelor's in English literature and religious studies from Kenyatta University and a master's in religious studies from Nairobi University, both in Nairobi, Kenya. She earned a PhD in religious studies and African Christianity from the University of Lancaster, England. Her thesis on the role of women in African Christianity focused on women's power and liberation in the African Independent Church. Dr. Inga's research focuses on religion, religious landscapes, religion and public policy, and the ethics of globalization. She is a founding member of the Circle of Concerned African Women Theologians, a Pan-African association of women who study the role and impact of religion and culture on African women's lives. She is also a member of the Black Catholic Symposium of the AAR and of the Association for the Academic Study of Religion in Africa. And lastly, but not least, Sarah Robinson is a US-based critical constructive scholar of religion, environment, and social justice. Her scholarship addresses ethical leadership in eco-food, sustainable agriculture, and climate change resilience among contemporary Muslim, Buddhist, and Christian community locations. She serves on the steering committee for the Religion and Food Unit of the American Academy of Religion and has served as a unit chair of ecology and religion for the American Academy of Religion in the Western region. She has taught religious studies, experiential learning for social justice, women's and gender studies, and environmental studies at Santa Clara University and Pacific Lutheran University in Washington. Her prior work in religious arts and environmental nonprofit organizations include organizing events for Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh, managing the first summer youth eco jobs program for California Youth Energy Services, and participating as a singer and administrator for the Oakland Interfaith Gospel Choir. Her publications include chapters in religion, food, and eating in North America, key thinkers on the environment, and that all may flourish, comparative religious environmental ethics. And now I would love to welcome the editors, our presenters, to take the floor.
Thank you so much for the very kind welcome, and it certainly is an honor to be here. Thank you. I will share my screen to show our slides on behalf of our working group, our editing team. Here is a slide showing Rosemary Radford Ruther and the book that was a kind of template for our book that Teresa will talk more about. A book from 1996 called Women Healing Earth, Third World Women on Ecology, Feminism, and Religion. And you see also the book cover for our book, Valuing Lives, Healing Earth, Religion, Gender, and Life on Earth. Here are the four of us presenting at the Parliament of World Religion last fall. The editorial team are the four of us, and we had the privilege of working with 18 chapter authors, some of whom are joining us today as well. And I'll invite Teresia to speak first.
So thank you very, very much, Chad and Erin and Sarah for the introductions. I see my role here a little bit like that of a storyteller. I'm all the way from Africa. We tell stories. I'd like to spend my time, some of my time, giving us the backstory for our book. My connection with Rosemary goes back to 1996. I had just come to teach. I've been invited all the way from Africa to come and teach on African religions at DePaul University here in Chicago. And she was in the middle of editing Women Healing the Earth book. And I remember when she heard that I had joined DePaul, she came all the way to my apartment and encouraged me to submit an essay from the perspective of Africa. And it's from that encounter that I wrote my essay in this book, The Koyo Theology of Land, that became part of this initial book in 1996. My first encounter with Rosemary was therefore one of like friendship and mentorship. I had not seen a computer, let alone used one in that year in Africa. And she was there to urge me on, to encourage me, this is doable. And so I want to thank you, take the opportunity to thank Rosemary for that mentorship that goes back quite a while. Fast forward to 2016, quite 20 years later, Catholic Theological Society decided that the theme that year was going to be ecological justice. And I was invited to do something about it. They call them invited sessions. And this is when I decided to convene a panel with the panelists that ended up including Teresa Yuga, Lillian Dube, and Sarah Batoni. When I told them about the opportunity, they all jumped to it because A, the topic was of personal interest to them, and B, they too had met Rosemary as a mentor, and they really wanted to be in a situation where they were honoring him, or rather her. Notice how I switch him, she, it. My language doesn't have pronouns. And so we got to Albuquerque, and they made their presentations of 3 beautiful essays. And the audience was happy. And they, like Oliver Twist, they said, can we have some more? Let us please have some more. And so when we came back home, we convened this time not as presenters, but as potential editors of a book to satisfy the audience at Albuquerque and beyond. And so we called for papers, and mostly from Global South, and we got older voices, Yvonne Gabara, writing this time round. We find Aruna Granadason, who was in this book, is also in the new book. We also got new voices, including Lilian Dube herself, who wrote a brilliant essay connecting the lynching tree of Nehanda, a prophet who challenged colonialism in Zimbabwe, and the lynching trees in the U.S. context, which triggered the song "Strange Fruit," hanging people on trees just because they are different from them. So the outcome of that call for papers is our new book, Valuing Lives, Healing Earth, Religion, Gender, and Life on Earth. And we dedicated it to Rosemary Ruther, who actually happens to have an essay in the book herself. I would recommend that you take a look at her own essay in which she honors Wangari Maathai. I don't know how many of us know Professor Wangari Maathai, the leading Nobel laureate who got her Peace Prize for planting trees back in Kenya and founding the Green Belt movement. And when she got the Peace Prize, people were like, why is she getting a Peace Prize for trees? She told them there is a link. She told us that there is a link between the way we treat the environment and our very own lives. We are digging our own graves, she said, if we continue to treat nature as if it's a machine, as in anthropocentric, what can we grab from nature? We should be asking what can, instead of saying what can nature do to us, we do for us, we should be asking instead what does nature do for us. And so I would invite you to actually probably read from both books, maybe in sequence. Other than my essay, the Theology of Land, being a favorite, another essay that is a favorite of mine in this book is from a writer from Zimbabwe, like Lilian, who talks about the indigenous African way of thinking and its eco-friendly principles. He talks about the Mutopo principle that says if a monkey's child is starving, I'm quoting from Ed, just a matter of time before a human child will be starving and will be dead in no time. So taking care of nature is in a way a selfish thing. We are digging our own graves, but nature is of intrinsic value and we need to take it into consideration. Rosemary saw that long time ago, and she spoke about the intersectionality of oppressions long before the word intersectionality was invented. I'll leave it there and let Teresa now, she's my namesake, but with an H, Teresa take up the story from there and unfold it. Rosemary Ruther, A Woman Healing Earth, and our continuation to honor her work and her vision.
Okay.
Teresa, the baton is yours.
Thank you. Yes, I want to convey.
So in our presentation, we have me next, but Teresa, would you rather go next and I can just show the slides?
You go next.
Okay, all right, so.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no
Didn't-
problem, no problem. Thank you for offering context for the book and the history that went into it. I'll talk a little bit about the connection with Pope Francis's Laudato Si, as well as give an overview of the book. So the 2015 encyclical Laudato Si on care for our common home begins with the words of St. Francis of Assisi's prayer, "Praise be to you, O Lord." Thus, the encyclical itself enacts a kind of prayer, which is not a personal wish, but a collective hope. Though encyclicals generally speak to Catholic bishops, this one was addressed to all people of goodwill, extending an inclusive sweep to the work. Pope Francis put forward the term integral ecology, which builds on prominent Catholic social teachings on solidarity with others, particularly prioritizing the poor. Francis's term integral ecology helped to globalize an environmental ethics and climate justice. At the start of the encyclical, Pope Francis invites readers to understand the earth as among the poor. He says, "The earth herself, burdened and laid waste, is among the most abandoned and maltreated of our poor. She groans in travail. We have forgotten that we are dust of the earth. Our very bodies are made up of her elements. We breathe her air and we receive life and refreshment from her waters." And he uses references to biblical elements to support his speaking. Pope Francis's emphasis on integral ecology dovetails with the early work of feminist theologian Rosemary Radford Ruether, who writes, "Converting our minds to the earth cannot happen without converting our minds to each other, since the distorted and ecologically dysfunctional relationships appear necessary when they actually support the profits of a few against the many." The U.S. Conference of Bishops defines solidarity in terms of familial and neighborly care towards peace and justice, citing.
I might exit the Zoom.
Okay. All right. So just moving forward, we have 4 book sections. And there's a grounding in a sense of solidarity that's both Catholic and beyond Catholic social teachings. It's an inclusive sense of solidarity. And it builds on definitions such as the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, who talk about solidarity in terms of familial and neighborly care towards peace and justice. Solidarity is not a passive perspective, but an active, practical, embodied, critical, constructive capacity, a skill, you could say. Integral ecology requires social, environmental, or climate justice in thorough solidarity. So the scope of the volume includes case studies from Africa, Asia, and the Americas, highlighting chapters on knowledge, ritual, activism, and food. So we have 5 chapters in the knowledge section. You can see the titles here. And as this meeting is being recorded, you're welcome to come back to this list. You can also check it out on the Peters Publishers website. They have the table of contents there for you. I'll just emphasize a couple of things from each chapter. So Ivone Gabarra from Brazil is looking at the priority for the poor, the theological priority for the poor. And she's naming elements of pollution, particularly around women of African descent in Brazil who are working to finding creative ways to do work in a situation when they have a lot of doors closed to them in terms of work opportunities. But yet the work opportunity that they find for themselves is on trash heaps. They're picking from trash heaps, usable things as well as recyclables. And so Ivone Gabarra is bringing from her perspective further attention to the lives of these women, further attention to the way that trash is a problem because whoever produces it leaves it for others to take care of. And this task is usually given to women and especially the poor. In the ritual section, there are several essays also coming from different places on the planet. And I'll just put a little bit of emphasis on an author in each section. Sylvia Marcos is dealing in solidarity. She's emphasizing the importance of understanding Indigenous medical practices as something that is drawn from a complex cosmology, a kind of epistemic universe of interconnection, interdependence, and symbolic action. And in that cosmos or universe, there is an honoring of every gendered person, that there is not a priority for just one gender. In the activism section, we have a handful of wonderful essays as well. Rosemary Ruther's essay, Teresa Hinga offered a bit of perspective on already. I'll just name Aruna Gnanadasan from India. She is working on climate justice from a theological perspective. And she, in our chapter, says, an earth-friendly God is a God of compassion who has profound reverence toward life, empathy towards those who suffer, and concern for the flourishing of all beings. The food section, again, has wonderful essays of a variety of perspectives, and I'll offer a bit more detail about Adrienne Crone. She's, she deals with bee health, and she is addressing integral ecology, the way that human health is not possible without agricultural health and pollinator health, and that those things are linked to each other. So just to finish up, there's an emphasis in our volume and in many of our writers on solidarity as a life-giving element. I'll also I'll read a sentence from our introduction, as well as note, since we're in a Jesuit context for the Lane Center, I'll call on a Jesuit voice to finish up for today. Solidarity is not abstract, but rather emerges through life-giving activities which mend the fabric of life. If we let them, the poor will place us before the abyss of the mystery we call God. They are a kind of door that opens before that mystery and through which God passes to get at us. Clearly, we need them more than they need us. Thank you for your attention. I will pass the baton over to Teresa, who will talk about Rosemary Radford Ruether.
Okay, so just thank you again for having us. So I'm going to reflect on Rosemary Radford Ruether as a prophet of the planetary. In the 21st century, Catholic feminist theologian Rosemary Radford Ruether is a reformer and prophet in the Roman Catholic Church, much like St. Ignatius of Loyola was in his 15th century Spanish world. Like Ignatius, Ruether also sees God in all things. In the spirit of Pope Francis's 2021-2023 Synod and the Jesuit tradition, Ruether is also a good listener, making her a prime role model for our synodal conversation today. Ruether's talent of listening has spurred her to collaborate with individuals across diverse cultures, religions, and ecumenical traditions on social justice issues. Ruether has not always felt welcome in our Catholic home. Some individuals in the Catholic Church have questioned her religious identity as a Catholic. Still, Rosemary consistently affirms that it is her formation in this faith tradition that has informed her vision, her life trajectory, scholarship, and activist commitments. Though many members have felt disempowered by church interpretation of doctrine, Rosemary has made a conscious choice not to leave the church. Instead, her aim has been to transform it. In our book, Valuing Lives, Healing Earth, Religion, Gender, and Life on Earth, Reuther's former student, Whitney Bauman, argues that Reuther is a prophet of the planetary, who even before the concept of ecofeminism was coined in 1974, has been engaged in textual analysis, conversation, scholarship, and activist work that draws parallels between the exploitation of women, the earth, and the global poor. Her books, Gaia and God, and Ecofeminist Theology of Earth Healing, Integrating Ecofeminism, Globalization, and World Religions, and her pivotal book, Women Healing Earth, Third World Women on Ecology, Feminism, and Religion, testify to her shared commitment with Pope Francis to the integral and social ecology that he has elaborated in his encyclicals Laudato Si and Fratelli Tutti. In the process, Rosemary has expanded Christian doctrine to reframe questions relating to climate change in our times. It is in this context that co-editors Lillian Dubé, Teresia Hinga, and Sarah Robinson and I have collaborated to celebrate Rosemary Radford Reuther's lifelong commitment to advocacy for the rights of women and the natural world. More specifically, our text, Valuing Lives, Healing Earth, revisits and celebrates her pioneering text, Women Healing Earth, Third World Women on Ecology, Feminism, and Religion. In it, it highlights the continued legacy of women in North America, Latin America, Asia, and Africa, who have continued engagement in on-the-ground activist work over the last 25 years. Our book includes seasoned ecofeminist scholars such as Brazilian ecofeminist Ivone Gabara, Indian scholar Aruna Ganadasan and Teresia, along with emerging voices in the fields of ecology, women, and religion. Like Rosemary and Women Healing Earth, we provide a platform for women in third world contexts from which to articulate their messages, challenges, and wisdom with regards to environmental justice issues in their respective regions. At the same time, like Reuther, we believe that individuals in the Western world can learn from women's experiences. In the context of Pope Francis' synodal vision, it is time for the Roman Catholic Church to listen to the voices of women around the globe. The women in our book are a good place to start. Their voices represent all regions of the world, including Africa, Brazil, Chile, Canada, India, Honduras, Korea, Mexico, North America, and Peru. Some of their names are Teresa Felipe Costa of the National Collectors Movement in Brazil, Berta Isabel Casares from Honduras, Maxima Acuna from Peru, Conspirando in Chile, the Salim Movement in Korea, Wangari Maathai in Africa, Indigenous leaders Marlon Cassiano and Judy Isek. Like Pope Francis, these women are interested in the Earth's need to heal and earth-friendly practices that have been undermined by Western values, which are now threatening us with our own demise. In the 21st century, I would like to invite the church to journey with women, the poor, and the most marginalized, as Rosemary Radford Reuther has done. For me, or for us, to feel at home within the Catholic Church, I would welcome inclusive God imagery, Christian interpretations of the Bible that do not privilege the male experience, and opportunities for women to hold leadership positions in the church. Happily, Pope Francis has recently moved in this direction. Currently, as a Roman Catholic Latina feminist woman in the church, I am hopeful because Pope Francis in the 2021 and 2023 Synod has introduced a method that is both feminist and democratic. Inspired by God, this Pope is open to the varying voices and opinions of all individuals in our global church. To conclude, in our historical moment, Rosemary Radford Reuther and the women in our book, Valuing Lives, Healing Earth, have a lot to teach us. The question is, will the church listen to us? Thank you. So the final presenter will be Lillian Dubé. Thank God, wonderful.
We carry on. So I am privileged to be here with you and at my school. So I want to welcome my colleagues and sisters and friends. We've worked together, prayed together, cried, and produced this volume not only for the community, not for our universities, not for promotion only, but for ourselves, because healing earth and healing ourselves is one of the driving forces. I want to acknowledge a matriarch that I've looked up to, who is in the room, and that's Teresia Hinga. Growing up in Africa and is an upcoming theologian, there wasn't much to read from women who looked and like us and experienced what we were closest to, from colonization to patriarchy. And so Teresia Hinga is one of the founding members of the Circle of Concerned African Women Theologians. You can look that up and see it's a body that engages a variety of issues concerning Africa, the continent, literally, from a feminist perspective. And it cuts across religions. So it's not just a Christian movement, it's an inter-religious a group of serious, concerned women theologians. Do we have a name for ourselves as African women theologians, like we have Mujerista, coined by Maria Sass Diaz, or Womanist theology, as in the Black American women's theology? I wouldn't say yes. We just call ourselves African women engaging theological issues on a very serious note. So thank you, Teresia, for making an effort to be here. We appreciate that. I also want to acknowledge Rosemary Radford Ritter, whom I met back in 1991, 92, and then I had an opportunity to work with her at Northwestern University during my fellowship year when I received the American Association of University Women Fellowship, and it took me to Northwestern University Garrett Theological Seminary. That's where Rosemary was. And she invited me to co-teach with her in a class entitled Feminist Theologies from the Third World. I still teach it, and I still owe her a lot for that experience of collaboration. So I met her as a collaborator. I was already doing my post-doctoral fellowship, and so I wasn't a student, but I was by far a junior in the discourse, and so I learned a lot from her. So in honoring her, I'm making on my own steps and retracting my own steps, and in working with Teresia Hinga, I'm doing pretty much the same, going back to where it was fresh and exciting. And so here we are, teaching at the University of San Francisco. I thought it would be interesting to explore how this book, our efforts, our book together, the editors and the authors. And I'm situated in a very interesting place because I'm both an editor and an author of an article. So I've my ears are flapping and just interested in hearing what and how my article is read and critiqued and questioned and evaluated by the students who read it. I thought I would make us consider how best this book can be used, and would start from how it is already being used. So we're looking at its use. Once you write a book, you've published it, you don't want to let it gather dust in the bookstores, in the libraries. So thank you again, Erin, for inviting us, and Erin and the Lent Center for helping us to deliver this book beyond our classrooms, because this text or multiple texts must be delivered to the classroom, yes. It must be delivered to our churches, I believe, to the religious and academic institutions, and to the communities, our communities of accountability. And this was a driving force when we sat and negotiated with our publishers who are in Europe. When we were all concerned about how Peters was going to publish this book and distribute it. And we were concerned about readership when we went to publication. We negotiated the best we could. And what we have now is what the best that could come out of it. It came with some concessions from our publisher, but a very consciously driven vision from the 4 publishers, editors, about who reads it and why they read it. So we are concerned that if this book sits on the shelves, that's not a good thing. And all of us, the 4 of the editors, are all teachers. We spend our lives in the classroom. So I didn't waste time to bring this book into my classroom when it was published in fall of last year, June 2021. I brought it to my classes, and I just testing the waters. I had already worked with one of my students who is a chapter, so I want to acknowledge it to my community, my USF community, Alisa Moore, who is one of the authors of a chapter in the first section. So publishing alongside my student was really huge, and I'm honored to have Alisa Moore, who is a student who doubled between theology and religious studies and environmental studies at USF, and all the professors who helped to find a voice and balance those 2 worlds, which I think are intrinsically connected. I salute you, and thank you, Alisa, for agreeing to work with me on that project and with us all. So that said, that's my starting point when I introduce the book to my students. I make it I introduce it as a process that any one of them could do. Okay, this is what you could do as a student. If you are engaged this area and that area, you could definitely publish, not only with me, but with your other professors. And guess what? Teresa is already doing that with the students. That's Professor Yuger, who teaches Chicano in Latino Studies Department. And she's teaching a course using this book in environmental justice. And in that course, she engages the students in civic learning, because this is a civic learning course. And she doesn't just engage students in reading this as a springboard and then engaging other articles, but she has collaborated with the students to edit, involve the students in the editorial work of this book, which is huge. So she speaks of publishing with the students as well. That theme goes, and it is important for us as teacher publishers, how we bring our publications into our classrooms, and we encourage to pass the baton, like Teresia said earlier on, which is a favorite word, really. What is the future of the earth, of justice, if we keep it enclosed, and if we do this as our own business? It's intergenerational. So the process of passing the baton, it is an important one. My other co-editor who brought this book into the classroom is Professor Sarah Robinson. And she brings this book into a course on comparative religions. That's huge and broad, and that's very bold, and that's what this book represents, really. It is not written from just a Christian perspective. It's predominantly Christian, yes, a Catholic for sure, but it broadens, it allows for broader perspectives into religion. And Professor Robinson does justice to that approach, interreligious, interdisciplinary approach to our book by creating a course on comparative religion, topics in comparative religions. That's where she locates this book in her own course. And so in her course, yes, the demands of comparative religions, the demands of gender, sexuality, race, and mission in learning outcomes, and of course, environmental studies, mission statement, and environmental studies. So she bridges all these disciplines. So it is interdisciplinary text that can be tapped into by a variety of professors. Okay, how has this inspired me? After introducing it to my course in which explores the Christian village, very broad, but in that Christian village and feminist theology from the third world, there's a perfect fit for this book. And my students, if they are in the room, I would love them to arise and shine in the question and answer session, which I should leave to start in a few minutes. So, in thinking about the future of this book, I'm thinking, well, I don't think this is a book that can start and end in the four walls of our classrooms, whether it's virtual or in the physical. I think this is a book that really should take us into the environment, should allow us, like Gebara in chapter 2 of the book, to tour the garbage spaces, to encounter the odors that come from the open and water treatment plants in District 10, just right in our neighborhood in San Francisco, to yes, understand what goes on between the environmental issues, particularly distribution of contaminants, which this book really does good justice to. So we move from cancer alleys in the southern states, and we go to Brazil, to the garbage dump heaps. And in between, you find there are some connections that you can make. So I'm thinking, well, shouldn't I develop a course? And I thought, well, it would be nice to bring our freshman students, in a freshman seminar, probably, maybe a different platform, but a course that would embrace environmental and racial justice, equity and inclusion from District 10 to Marine, and explore the distribution of contaminants. What would it look like? How would it prepare the students for the 4 years that they would have at USF? How would it help the students to interact and engage Laudato Si, Pope Francis' visionary outline of where we should be at, or what we should strive for? And in the process, I don't have any answers, but I would challenge the audience to think broadly about how the church could benefit from this handbook, and how other institutions should do the same. So I think I should leave it to that and get to have a response from the audience with regards to what this means to them.
Yes, thank you all so much for offering an overview of your book and how we might engage with it in fruitful ways. Just a reminder, if you do have a question, please raise your hand and I will ask for you to unmute yourself if you want to share vocally. And if you would like to place it in the chat, that is also available to you. And you feel free to send me a direct message if you want it to be anonymous, and then I will relay it to our panelists. Yeah, so I think we have about 10 minutes for a Q&A session. Alfonso.
Good afternoon. My name is Alfonso. I am a student at Cal State LA in Professor Ugart's class. Thank you, Professor, for inviting me to the presentation. I really enjoyed it. And I wanted to ask you, Professor, I guess because I don't have a chance sometimes in class too, but based on like your presentation, I wanted to ask you, what are some of the things that you think the Catholic Church can do to be more inclusive towards women? Like, what kind of roles would you like the Catholic Church to be more give to women?
Well, I'm going to say happily about a week and a half ago that Pope Francis opened up spaces of leadership within the Vatican itself. But I also think there's little things like women being able to preach in terms of homilies at Mass, women being able to, like I said, being attentive to inclusive God imagery. Sometimes we feel like we're second class in the call to be priests and deacons. For myself, I wanted to be a priest, but that wasn't an option for me. So I understand myself as a priestly leader, but I think those things would be women in prominent positions in the church as priests or deacons, inclusive language, and being able to preach just to the people. Thank you, Alfonso.
Teresia, you had mentioned earlier in the presentation that there is a link between how we treat the environment and ourselves. And in the introduction to the book, you all state that it is important to promote healing relations with local beloved places as activities of remembering and recovering wholeness. And I'm wondering for all of us here, how might that how might the book suggest we do that both individually and maybe collectively in a specific region? So like the university, for example, or maybe for those who aren't in university, how might they facilitate those healing relations? And how might that also connect to the theme of global solidarity that the book engages with?
One of the clear ways I would say would be just to bring these voices into the spaces that we occupy, like you've done. So thank you, Chad and Erin. Bring these voices and highlighting them. How many times do we have publications by women writing about issues of the environment in the global south, and we just don't get to hear about them. We don't just get to read them. And how much does this book cost? And if you don't make an effort, a deliberate effort to bring this book into your conversations, then it will just pass by. And on that note, I want to appreciate everyone in administration whom I shared this book with. Oh, we have this publication. They looked at it and they thought it was valuable. And many times that is missing. And when that doesn't happen, a publication is just put aside. It's one of those, it's a book, so what? But at the University of San Francisco, we have a culture of highlighting such works. And the library jumps in on such publications like you've done, just highlighting these voices and bringing, it opens consciousness, and it helps us to heal. And part of the healing comes from not just being comfortable in reading what you're familiar with, but walking through the situations of extreme poverty that are ignited by exclusion from exclusion, or on racial, on class, on gender, on all the terms that we discuss. So unless your students are uncomfortable, or you make them uncomfortable, unless our community is not comfortable, unless you don't dislodge them from their comfort zones by works such as these, then you will not appreciate this Peruvian tapestry, which you find in the book. How do they come up with such radiance when they are located in some serious doldrums? So sometimes I walk out of my class feeling, haven't I made my students sad? And at one time I confessed to my daughter, and she said, that's good. I think we need to be uncomfortable. So just doing what you've done, encouraging people to read this, will bring healing when you look at what it means to heal the earth and heal yourself in the process, what other communities are doing in different parts of the globe, not just in your location.
Yes, and to add on to that, not to think that ecological consciousness and practice is something for far away and those far off places. I'm thinking of the way we have kind of nicely ignored, even harassed, so to speak, the indigenous peoples of this country, for reminding, like Wangari did, that if we do not do a positive dance with nature and that a positive dance with the environment, Mountain Umunhum, Mount Kenya in Kenya, we are literally digging our own graves. I'm thinking of the standoff at Standing Rock. People don't seem to understand where the indigenous peoples are coming from. They don't want an oil pipeline to pass through their sacred space, sacred because they are burial places. We tend to think they are dead bones down there. No, they are sacred spaces. And so recovering, reclaiming, reaffirming the indigenous worldviews. I talked about the African indigenous worldview and how it is truly ecologically friendly. One of the books that I use, other than this one, is by a Tanzanian called Sambuli Mosha. He identifies the African worldview as a fourfold worldview, that we believe in God, that we believe in the interconnectedness between the individual and community, such that we can say, I am because we are, that we believe it's a living, interconnected universe. You touch one corner of it, it destroys, it cascades into another. And this is a worldview that's shared by many indigenous peoples. And we have been overcome by modernity. One of the essays in this book talks about how we have been imprisoned by modernity. I forget who has written in our new book about the enclosure by modernity and the straitjacket effect. And so the whole question of sacred spaces there and here, reconnecting with them as part of the healing process. I also wanted to comment very quickly about the naming of African feminism. There's a reason we called ourselves the Circle of Concerned African Women Theologians. For us, the word circle is just, we took a whole afternoon to figure out what we are going to call ourselves, and we settled for the circle. Now, the circle is a metaphor. It's not just a word. The circle goes on forever. You can join, as many of you, men and women, join the circle. There will be room for you because it expands forever. It's a symbol of inclusiveness and recognition of diversity. We are connected around the circle. So I just wanted to highlight the philosophy behind the Circle of Concerned African Women Theologians. We didn't want to call ourselves feminists because feminism has gotten bad press elsewhere. And yet it shouldn't be, because as far as I'm concerned, not Rosemary, pioneer Elizabeth Schuster Fiorenza has the best definition of feminism. Feminism is the belief that women, and practice that women are people. And so feminists are the ones who challenge any situation that treats women as non-people, like garbage collectors, like beasts of burden. They are carrying the luggage like donkeys around. Feminists, male and female, will challenge in a prophetic way, like Rosemary has done, those situations where women are treated as if they are not people. I'll pause there so that others can also have their time.
Thank you so much for the responses. We are at the 1 p.m. mark, so if people have to leave, please feel free. Professor Ugar, you wanted to address this question quickly?
I just want to say that an important part of my class is recognizing that our personal equilibrium in terms of environmental justice is just as important as the work that we do within our respective regions. And I know for myself, there's different challenges, especially since now in the COVID world, we're on our computers, we're on our phones. And I challenge students to just put the phone down, and it's hard to do those kind of things, but to spend more time with people and with nature, because it's healing for us, and we need to be healed in order for us to try to engage in that earth healing practices.
Thank you all so much for your responses and for the presentation. Again, this is such an important work for our time, and we're super appreciative that you came and were with us today. I want to say for everyone at the University of San Francisco that there is e-access to the book as of yesterday. So I highly encourage you all to look at it. I've been reading the beginning parts of it, and it's absolutely incredible. So thank you all so much. Erin, if there's anything you'd like to say before we leave.
Just to echo your gratitude, and thanks also to Chad for bringing this all together, but to the amazing speakers, and just for this tremendous contribution, the voices that you've highlighted, and yeah, we just really appreciate your time and your expertise, and look forward to digging into that book. Thank you. Thanks everyone for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Bye now.
I'm so appreciative as well.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Teresa, namesake with an
Yeah.
H, and Sarah. Say hello to Flora.